You're listening to the Healthy Creative Ministry podcast with Matt Curtis. This is the podcast that helps you take your creative ministry from wherever you are today to healthy and effective.
Wouldn't it be nice if serving in church communications didn't mean enduring chaos? I know for me, much of my time in ministry was chaotic. It felt like there was this last-minute project after a last-minute project. And today on the podcast, we're going to address that. I'm going to give you 3 different things that you can do to end the chaos in your ministry. Now, before we jump into those things, I want to make it clear that these are not things that you can do independent of leadership. And the reason I want to make that clear is because so much of our angst in communications comes from this desire to pull away and try to solve these problems in our own little bubble. We assume they're comm problems, and therefore comm should solve them. Everyone should listen to us because we know how to run comm. I'm going to challenge you on this. And I'm going to challenge you because I tried that for many years, and it does not work. That's the short version of that. It just leads to frustration and burnout. Recently, I was browsing LinkedIn, and I'm connected to Todd Rhodes. Todd Rhodes is the co-founder of Chemistry Staffing. And he shared a stat that I want to pass along, and it's actually really kind of been playing back in my mind and is a little bit of the purpose or kind of the driver, I guess, behind this episode. He shared a stat that said, out of 3,400 church staff who were surveyed in this study that they conducted with Chemistry Staffing, 75% of creative arts staff have seriously considered leaving in the past year. 75%. That is shockingly bad. That is not a good situation for creative arts in the church. Now, full transparency here, I would have been in that 75% for many years throughout my career. There was so much frustration that I was trying to navigate in a lot of these different seasons throughout my career that it felt like the only option was to leave. And for those of you who have been following along for a while, that was my story. I quit my job at one point, and some health challenges actually prevented us from moving. And so I went back to the job that was burning me out. And that was a transformative experience for me. And I learned a lot about how I could approach the problem differently to yield different results. And that's so much of what I communicate through Lunchtime Heroes. I do this through my consulting work when I'm working with churches. I hope that the podcast has been a bit of a educational journey for you as you've heard some of these stories over the years that I've been doing this. But this stat for me was sobering because the church is better when the creative arts contributors are involved, when we're able to participate and bring our gifts and our skills to the mission of the church. And so that is the problem that we're going to try to fix here. But like I mentioned, when it comes to partnering with leadership, we can't overcome this challenge without their involvement. Now, that may be a shutdown for you. That was me for some of my years, not many, but some. I felt like leadership wasn't willing to participate in some of these conversations. But I'm going to challenge you on that because as I look back over my career, in the years where I felt like leadership wasn't interested in having a conversation about it, I was wrong. That was my perspective. And that was born out of frustration. And I would say that was born out of the beginnings or the movement toward burnout that was caused by the chaos that we're going to be talking about solving. I want to encourage you, if this resonates with you and you're thinking, I don't think leadership's interested at all, I want to challenge you and I'm going to invite you to listen to an episode. I'm going to put it in the show notes. I'm going to put it in a link on YouTube. It's season 1, episode 25. It's called 7 Ways You Need to Grow Your Leadership as a Creative in the Church. These problems that plague communications impact us, but they are not just comm problems. The solutions require broader buy-in. This is our invitation, and I would say further, this is our responsibility to lead from the seat of communications. Sometimes leadership means we make the rules. Not usually. Most of the time, leadership means we initiate the relationship, we cultivate buy-in, we get people on the same page, we move people into alignment. That's often what leadership means. I thought leadership is just you're the boss and you make the decisions. The higher I moved up in the organization, the less I felt like I could do that. And so that was kind of it's different here than I thought it was. Leading alongside the rest of the church's leadership team, I didn't feel like I somehow had some magic, gavel where I could just say everybody's doing this now. It was the opposite. Instead, the conversations were, how do we get people on the same page? How do we help them understand the vision? So I want to challenge you to grow as a leader through this season. If you feel like you're enduring chaos, if you feel like you're in that 75% who want to leave, listen to that episode, spend some time really prayerfully considering the opportunity to grow in your own leadership, and then send this episode to leadership to invite a conversation. So if you're leadership and you've just listened to that, hello, glad you're here. We're going to talk about 3 ways that you can partner with communications to really solve so much of the chaos tension that lives in communications. Now, these are very much involving communications, but there are also layers that reach beyond communications. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to go through each of these, what they look like. The solution to much of the chaos that we're talking about here comes down to 3 different specific routines that we need to formalize. The first is we need a standard event planning timeline. The second is that we need a standard promotional plan. And the third is we need a standard for event promotion. So let me unpack what each of those means. The first here, a standard event planning timeline. One of my favorite jokes that I don't know if it lands anytime I use it, but I continue to use it because I'm bought in. I love this joke. When a church comes to me and says, hey, Matt, we need help with our Easter graphics, I will every time say, oh, are we still doing Easter? Are we doing that again this year? Haha, so hilarious. But I've realized over the years, it actually reveals something that I didn't always recognize when I was in ministry. The pace of the chaotic planning and the hurried event execution made me believe that all of the things that we did in our ministry were surprises. It wasn't until I had served for a couple years in the same organization that I realized, wait a minute, we do the same 10 events every year. This ministry has the same kickoff event, has the same mid-year celebration, has the same volunteer party, has the same graduation event, has the same onboarding, mixer, find the people that match these groups. All of these ministries are really, really cyclical. But what was not the same every year was how we went about planning these things. And so the key that I have found to eliminating chaos in the event planning portion of things is just by saying, this is how we plan events. I put together a timeline. I'm going to put a link to the document that I created just so you can see what it looks like. I had a conversation with our facilities team at one point, and I realized, I didn't know this until that point. I'd been at this church for years. You couldn't plan an event as a ministry leader unless you booked the room a year in advance. I mean, there's some wiggle room, 11 months in advance. But that meant we knew every event that was going to be happening almost a year in advance. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. How are we constantly discovering that we have to prevent or to promote an event coming up? It felt like every time I was having a conversation with a ministry leader, they were shocked that it was time to promote their event. But they planned the event a year ago. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to book a room on campus. And it clicked with me that there were a lot of operational pieces that went into planning an event, and they were all scattered. And so what I did, it was a little bit rebellious at the time because I didn't have authority over all of these different areas, but I went and I talked to all of the teams that are involved in event planning. In your church, it may be 3 people. It may be 16 people. It doesn't actually matter how many people are involved. What I found was that every team had a process, but it felt like every team had a process. It didn't feel like there was one event planning process. It felt like there were 16. If I have to book a room, I got to talk to facilities. If I have to, if they're going to be a certain number of guests or whatever, and we need campus safety or security or whatever to be there, I need to talk to them about it. If we're going to be having things that plug in, the IT or the productions team are going to need to be involved. If we have check-in, IT needs to be involved. We're going to promote it, so communications needs to be involved. There's so many people that need to be involved in these different events. But that just made it easy for each ministry to forget things or to miss things. So instead of having 16 different processes, we just said, this is how you plan an event at our church. And what it did is it simplified everything. Now, an event leader, a ministry leader who's planning an event, could get this document and say, wait a minute, I just need to go through this list and do these things? Yeah, that's it. And what it does is it gives you this repeatable process so that every interaction around event planning is largely the same. I'm having the communications conversation at the same time every time. So I know that I'm not going to be behind, right? Because I'm having the conversation when I need it. This is how you plan events at our church. So I mentioned at the beginning of this is why you need leadership's buy-in. This is outside of communications. This is bigger than communications. This really lives in kind of like an ops role, like operations, business administrator, executive pastor type of solution. But they rarely are the ones who are connected enough to the operations at that level to build these things without having a lot of those conversations. And so this is where us as communications have some skin in the game. We can lead some of these processes, or at least we can say, hey, here's a problem that I'm seeing, and this is a way that I see a pathway forward. What we do when we standardize the approach is we give clarity to every person on staff or volunteer who has the ability to plan an event. We have a process that we go through in order to plan our events here. There you go. That's follow the process. Talk about simplicity for onboarding. What that does now is it lets everyone know that the deadlines are the deadlines. 6 weeks out, we need to have this decided, and we're going to be moving forward in all these other things. Okay, make your decisions by 6 weeks out on these things. Productions needs to know this at this point in time, so they have microphones and cables and everything. Great. Facilities needs to know this at this point in time. Awesome. We're now equipping every team who is supporting events in the organization with the details they need in a timeline that matches their needs. It dramatically reduces the chaos that happens in your organization. The second thing I mentioned, a standard promotional plan. I have an episode, I'm going to put this in the show notes as well, where I've talked about promotional plans, my personal recommendation based on trying a ton of approaches. But I'm going to give you a shorter version of kind of what this looks like. The promotional plan basically says we already know what we're going to be promoting for the next 90 days because we've built a promotional plan that elevates and moves the mission moving events into visibility for our people. If there are 100 events that are happening, we have to pick some. We can't promote all of them at the same level. And so we pick what are the ones that are really core to what we're trying to accomplish this year, core to the mission of the church, core to a particular problem that exists in our congregation. There were seasons where our congregation was really struggling maritally. There were just a lot of families in our church body that were struggling, either separated or considering getting divorced. In some cases, were getting divorced. Just a lot of challenges with regards to marriage. So the promotional plan should reflect that problem. That should reflect an elevated promotion of events that are designed to help solve that problem or address that need or care for people in those circumstances. That's what an effective, mission-focused, mission-first promotional plan does. It elevates the things that are moving the mission of our church forward. And so I'm going to put a link to there's a case study that I have that kind of walks through it. I also have a course that walks through all of these details in terms of how to build a healthy communications team. And so if you're like, this is really what we need, but we don't really know what to do, the course is a great way to do it. or reach out. We could have a conversation and see what that looks like as well. But the promotional plan is really key to removing conversations that I found to be very draining. And I would say they threatened the depth of relationship that I could have with my coworkers. So I would be walking down the hallway and somebody would come up to me acting all nice. Matt, buddy, like, hey, so how's it going? Like super, how's it going? Would love to make sure you're doing well. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine. So I got this event coming up, right? And I know this is not typically the kind of thing we promote from the stage, but hear me out. I think this is going to be a really, really big event. I think it just has so much potential for really impactful ministry. I mean, you care about ministry. I know you're big on ministry. Like, you care about that. All of these like barter conversations, they prevented me from really being able to have relationships with people on the team around me, because it felt like there was always some exchange that was happening, or there was always some like friendship currency that there was a layer there. And it led to the last podcast, episode 101. Why is communication so lonely? It's lonely because people are trying to leverage their personal relationship with you in order to get favors in a promotional sense for their ministry. That's a big part of why. The promotional plan shuts that down, and not in a harsh way. It shuts it down in a very structured and organized and clearly supporting the mission type of way. It says, these are the events that are moving our mission forward. They're the ones we're going to elevate. There you go. That's what we're doing. And it lets you be very clear about what you're going to be promoting over the next, really every weekend. These are the events that are coming. These are the ones that fit that promotional calendar or that promotional plan. The answer has been laid out by the strategy that we deployed through the promotional plan. And so this is something that was really transformative for me. When we first built this, it was a game changer, because those barter conversations, those sidebars of trying to gain some influence with me, those were gone. Those were off the table, because my response was, we have a promotional plan and we already know the things that kind of fit within that window. And so, yeah, that's not how we make that decision anymore. It's not whose good graces is the comm person in right now. That's not, or I guess the other way, who is in the comm person's good graces. That's not how we decide what announcements are happening. You need to build a structure around it. Scripture's clear. It's always interesting to me, the spiritual gifts conversation. A lot of people go to this passage about speaking in tongues. That's kind of the context that they set it up with. It's about order. It's about order in the church. Okay, but here, I want to take spiritual gifts out of that. It's about order in the church. We want to have order. We want to have clear systems and processes and order in the way that we're functioning. And that is lacking in so many communication context, and it expresses itself to the congregation. They're confused. They don't know what they should be participating in. They don't know what the next step is. Ministry leaders don't feel supported. Comm leaders feel like they're just a vending machine, and they're just being used for, taking orders like a chef, but they're trained to be a chef, but they're being asked to microwave hot dogs. That was the example I used. I'm a culinary trained chef. Somebody is asking me to microwave hot dogs. It's just not what we're gifted. It's not the full scope of our gifts. We can contribute in so much more meaningful of a way, but we need a structure to do that in. And that's what the promotional plan provides, a structure around the way that we communicate to the congregation. The last thing is a standard for event promotion. Now, you may think, well, wait a minute. I thought we just talked about a promotional plan. A promotional plan says, what are we promoting? The standard for event promotion says, when you get promotion, this is what that looks like. And so you do actually build this in the context of a promotional plan, but I want to call it out separately, because another contributor of chaos is this perpetual reinvention. We need to innovate every time we need to communicate. And that is exhausting, and it's reinventing the wheel in a way that is just not helpful. Instead, define how you promote events by what pieces go into supporting that promotion. For example, the largest, most mission-moving events that you have in your organization, those should get the biggest level of support. So that could be, every context is different. If we were to work together, we could help build this for you. If you go through the process yourself, this is what you'll want to identify. What are the mechanisms that we found to be the most helpful and the most impactful for us? Most of the time, a stage announcement about this event. This is the big stuff. This is the stuff that is on mission, right? These are not necessarily the largest events, but the ones that are tied closest to the mission of your church. So a stage announcement, probably a couple weeks in the email. If you're doing an email, you'll probably, maybe you'll have a printed piece that you'll hand out on the weekends. Maybe you'll do a targeted podcast episode that week, or a video on social that's specifically talking about it. Maybe you'll be, putting up signs in the bathrooms. There are a couple churches I work with that have those. Whatever it is that's your most prominent promotion, that's where that goes. Then you have a second tier. They get less. They get a different strategy for promotion. Maybe you have a container online that's all of your events. They absolutely belong there. Maybe they get a feature on a podcast, but they're not like the main thing that you're communicating. Maybe you have I know a lot of churches are doing kind of like YouTube shows where it's like, let's go deeper on a topic. Maybe it comes up there to that audience. Maybe it's really heavily promoted through the ministry itself, but not at the all church level. Those are all things that you have to navigate, but what you're doing is you're building a standard package around how you promote what you promote. Here's what it looks like practically. Bob comes up to me and says, Matt, men's retreat is coming. We need promotion. I can do one of two things. I can say, okay, let me invent a strategy and a custom plan specifically for this one event. No, let's not do that. Let's look at the standard for event promotion. Great. Looking at our promotional strategy, this is a tier 2 event. That means you get 2 emails. It means you get, volunteers dedicated to calling every man on our campus. It means that you get 1 stage announcement instead of 3. It means that, you get a banner outside, whatever that package looks like, you know exactly what it is. So now you don't have to spend any time at all figuring out the how of how you're going to promote it. You already know that because it's been defined. The reason this matters so much, obviously the chaos stuff that we're talking about, but the reason that this package thing, this standard for event promotion matters so much, ministry leaders who don't have success are going to complain, and they're going to blame communications, because most of the time that's what happens. Communications did not promote our event well enough. That's why our numbers were down. That happened all the time for us. Maybe we were an anomaly. I doubt it. So what you're doing now is you're saying, no, we're going to standardize this so that we can measure it. So let's say that 10 events run through this same standard for event promotion. 3 of them did terrible, 4 of them did pretty good, and 3 of them did amazing. It wasn't the promotion that was the difference, because it was the same across all of them. So now you can actually have more targeted conversations around what was going wrong. This happened to us with men's events at our church. One of the things that we realized was that there was a shift culturally where those types of events were massively popular, and then they weren't. We were studying that change, and we were seeing the numbers tell that story, but we were missing what was happening because we could just blame comm. And we could say, you just should have given us more promotion. You should have done more things. We didn't have a clear standard by which we could say, this is how we promote everything, and no one else is having this problem. That's the kind of insight that you want, but variables don't give you that. Every custom plan has a chance to work better or worse than the one that you ran before it. Now, same scenario. You have 10 events that you've supported. All 10 of them are struggling. Okay, it's fair to ask the question. Maybe we're not promoting this well. Or all 10 of them are doing well. Great. It's still not comm's like magical success. It means that ministry is resonating. The ministries that you're planning are resonating with the people that you're trying to serve through those ministries. So what we're doing in these 3 different areas, a standard event planning timeline, a standard promotional plan, and a standard for event promotion, What we're doing is we're removing variables, we're removing custom everything, we're removing constant and unending invention, we're removing bartering, and instead we're saying we have built a standard on how we communicate and how we plan in our organization. That standard is open to changing over time, but we need to operate this standard long enough so that we can meaningfully evaluate what is and what is not working. Now, quickly, I just want to address what might be a tension that's emerging in the heart of a creative. Systems and standards and processes like this sometimes make us feel like we're no longer able to be creative. Like our creativity is in the developing of the custom plan. But I want to challenge you to recognize that that's not where your creativity is best used in the context of serving your church. Your creativity is best used in building that event promotion, the standard that you've built. It's executing on the things in it. It's not saying we need 2 videos instead of 1. It's saying we have 1 video, let's make it a good one. That's really where our creativity shows up. And what these structures actually do for us is they actually carry so much of the structure that's necessary for us to be able to now lean into the creative expression and the creation of the different elements. So these structures actually free us up in a massive way. And so I know that sometimes systems and structures feel a little bit like, I don't know. These are the most freeing things you can implement into your ministry. And so I want to encourage you, whether you are the calm person who's listening to this and thinking, man, life is chaotic, I just don't know what to do about it. Grow in your leadership and begin having conversations with leadership about these changes. If one of your creatives sent you this message or sent you this episode, and you're one of the leadership, if you're a senior pastor, executive pastor, business administrator, operations guy, it doesn't really matter, wherever you fit on that spectrum of things, the creatives on your team need structure and they need plans, but they don't always know how to build them. They don't always have the authority to implement them. And so I want to invite you into a partnership here. I want to invite you into, yes, some dedicated time. You're going to have to figure out how to bridge the gap between the creative and the non-creative, if that's the background that you come from. I have a book called Watch Your Language. It's designed to help bridge this specific gap for creatives and non-creatives serving in church ministry, because I believe that the church is more impactful and effective at accomplishing her mission when creatives are involved and are able to contribute to the mission in a meaningful way. But the chaos that often comes with creative ministry is preventing us from really making a meaningful impact. We need your help with structure. We need your help with systems and processes. We can't do it on our own, but we need those things. And the best way to solve the problem is when both of you are in the conversation and you're leaning in and figuring out the best way to solve these things. That's my hope for you. My hope for you is that you recognize, even in this conversation, we need this. We need to reduce the chaos that exists in our ministries, specifically in our creative ministry. I don't want 75% of creatives on a church staff to leave. This is kind of personal for me in a way. A couple years ago, I was working with a handful of different creatives. I just started the Christian Creative Group on School, and a bunch of people joined, and it was really, really exciting for me to be able to pour in and invest and develop this group of creatives. And over probably a couple week period, 7 different people all left, not the group, not to another church. They left ministry entirely. I don't think that that's bad in the sense that, I think that all of them had great reasons. All of them felt like God was saying, yep, the next step for you is outside of the church. So it's not to say that this was a rebellious thing, but I do know that a lot of times the frustration that we endure in communications makes not working in ministry really attractive. I know people who help people in ministry make the transition to non-ministry, to marketplace. And I love it. I love what they're doing. But I just think that we can help the church by not creating an environment that creatives want to leave. 75% of creatives wanting to leave or having thought about leaving in the last year is not an okay stat. We need to own that, and we need to recognize that, and we need to do something about it. If you don't know what to do about it, and you think that, yeah, this is real, I see it in my own team, please reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. I always love having these discovery calls where we just talk through the challenges that are in front of you. Sometimes these problems are super easy to fix. Grand scheme of things, implementing 3 systems across your organization isn't that complicated. It's not really that difficult of a task. You may feel like it's beyond the ability that you have right now. You don't have the time. Fine, let's have a conversation. I'll make them for you. I'll give you a rough draft to react to. We can do this. You can do this. Your ministry can get healthier in this way, but it won't happen on accident.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Healthy Creative Ministry Podcast. This podcast is just one of the ways Lunchtime Heroes can help you build a healthy creative ministry in your church. Stay up to date on the latest by signing up for the Creative Bites email at lunchtimeheroes.co.